So hello and welcome to the latest webinar in the PyQ Intelligence for the Future series. I'm Alison Jones, Director of Practical Inspiration Publishing, host of the Extraordinary Business Book Club. It's very, very good to have you here. And the aim of these webinars is to explore how work is changing in these unprecedented times, and also give us the insights, the strategies, the skills to help navigate that transformation better. And if you have a particular topic that you would like us to cover, or any feedback on how we can make these sessions even more useful, do drop me a line afterwards, alison@alisonjones.com. But I'm going to introduce you now to today's speaker. Rob Hatch is the president of Owner Media Group. He's the author of Attention, The Power of Simple Decisions in a Distracted World. We have our matching copies just behind us on the shelves, if you can. And he is a sane voice in a crazy world. He helps people take decisions and do the work that matters. And he's going to share with us today his own personal systems for productivity and some thoughts on how you can make life and work better for you. And as I say, there will be time at the end of the talk for Q&A, but do just post questions as they occur to you or observations in the chat. Right, I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to hand over to you, Rob.
Thanks so much, Alison. I appreciate it, and so great to be here. So I'm going to, again, as Alison said, my name is Rob Hatch. We'll cover that a little bit more in a second. I'm here to talk to you today about personal systems for productivity. And the way that I do webinars, I just want to, explain a little bit. It might be different than what you're used to. Is I have a set of notes that I use to guide everything. And one of the reasons that I rely on these notes, one, it helps me to stay focused on delivering everything that I intended. But at the same time, I want you to be able to relax and know that these notes are going to be available. I'm just going to show you that all these notes are going to be available for you at the end. I'll give you a way to access those notes. So if you like to take notes during the webinar, please feel free. If not, these will be available for you as well. And my goal here really is just to help you build simple, personalized systems to help you do your work better. That's part of my personal mission, is to help others do their work better. And these systems, the personal systems, the personalized systems that I end up using myself, are flexible. It's something that I want you to be able to personalize them for yourself. So here are the wins that we're going to walk away with, or you're going to walk away with, hopefully. We're going to talk about decide ahead of time, the success block, managing distractions, the blank page, which, as it turns out, is one of people's favorite things to talk about and ask me questions about. It's the simplest thing in the world. And the simple business systems for you going forward in the form of what we call action stacks. And of course, at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions. So as Alison mentioned, I'm Rob Hatch. I'm the president of Owner Media Group, and we provide strategies and skills for the modern business. I'm also a business coach. Most of my clients come to me when they're facing some sort of critical or important decision in their business, and they're really wrestling through that. They've got a lot of different options, and they're just trying to figure out, how best to move forward. So I usually help people in those critical junctures in their business move past where they are and grow. I want to make a quick note about the word productivity and how I think it's been sort of twisted a lot. There's a sort of hustle and grind trend that I think we're emerging from, where everyone was, pushing to get more done all the time, more and more and more. I don't find that to be terribly inspirational or motivational or sustainable, quite frankly. That level of energy, I think, doesn't fit with who we are and how we're wired. I think we need rest. If you look at any marathon trainer or anyone, any elite athletes have rest days. They take some days where that's part of the plan. And I think we need to incorporate more rest and time and space. And that's really one of the things one of the reasons I wrote the book, actually, was to incorporate that space. So the goal here is not to help you get so much more done or cram more in your day. It's to help you do the stuff that you want to do, rather than constantly reacting and responding to the things that other people want you to do. Personally, I'm not a big, strict, rigid system person. I like frameworks. There are certain concepts that we can we all have to use to build things like a house. There's foundations, there's walls, considerations for how you're going to use the space and the roof to keep it all covered, but we can build it any way we want. And that's really why I want this to be your system in the end, for you to figure out, using these methods, how do you can adapt them to yourself. Okay, so let's just talk about decide ahead of time. If there is one concept that supports every system I utilize, it's to decide before I have to. And really, what that means for me, or put another way, is that I want to eliminate having to make decisions in the moment. My brain cannot be trusted sometimes. If I am left to my own devices in the moment, if I haven't made a decision ahead of time, I'm going to choose poorly. If I start my workday and I haven't written down exactly what I'm going to work on, I'm so much more susceptible to other people's agendas. My friend and business partner, Chris Brogan, has a phrase that he uses quite often: email is the perfect delivery system for somebody else's agenda. So when we check it, when we go into our inbox, we know that we're going to have to make a million tiny decisions, and we're going to have to respond to, we're subjecting ourselves to having to respond to someone else's needs rather than working on what we need to work on. So for me, I decide the night before exactly what I'll be doing, exactly when I'll be doing it, and for how long. And as much as possible, I prepare to have everything I need in front of me. So that's part of my shutdown ritual at the end of the day, is I review everything and I am choosing what it is that I'm going to work on first thing in the morning. So let's talk about that in the form of the success block that I was telling you about. So deciding ahead of time, or deciding before I have to, the idea is really just to make sure that I'm not kind of scanning about trying to figure out, like, there's always something to do in our business, but I'm not scanning about in my inbox or my calendar or some random to-do list trying to figure out what I should work on when I arrive at work. I also don't want someone else telling me immediately what that is. I want to choose for me how I'm going to work, and what it is that I need to work on, what's important for me. Pardon me. So the success block, for the past 6 years, I've been scheduling a 2-hour block of time each morning where I work on my 3 most important projects. So that's 40 minutes for each one. I work on each one for about that length of time, and then take about a 5-minute break in between. My brain, again, likes rest, likes a little break. Excuse me. Stay hydrated, right? Even if it's coffee. So I typically schedule this time between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. each workday, and I try to be as specific as I can for each of those 40-minute segments. I don't want to have to decipher what it means. And so here's what that generally looks like. Instead of writing on that success block, so I have just picture 3 boxes. Actually, I'm going to scroll right down, just show you right here, that success block. I have a daily sheet that I use, I fill out every night, and I write out those 3 most important projects. And instead of writing update website in one of those blocks, which isn't terribly clear, right? That's, if I saw update website on my, in that box, I wouldn't exactly know what I meant, or I'd have to remember what it was that I thought I meant about that earlier. And for me, where I actually have a few websites that I manage, I'm not sure which website it was. So it's not terribly helpful just to write update website. I want to be really clear. It's also so broad that it could take forever. I mean, update website I could keep going on and on, but I've said that I want to work for 40 minutes. So the night before, I wrote down, rewrite the about page for robhatch.com. That's much more clear, much more specific. And when I start my day, that simple decision kind of shrinks the problem for me, tells me exactly what I'm going to focus on. It reduces any other decisions that sort of scanning about, like, what did I mean? It also decreases my anxiety and this sort of overwhelm. Like, working on a website can feel very big. There's so much I need to do, and I saw someone else's website and that looks so cool. I should should probably do that. And, maybe I need to spend some time looking at other websites now. So I jump down a rabbit hole of looking at other websites I like. That causes me a lot of anxiety, a lot of that feeling of, oh, I should be doing this. My website should be better. It should be more like this. It should be more like that. And I'm just casting about here. There's a whole lot of, fear of missing out stuff comes out, and it's horrible, honestly, for me. But the specificity with which a plan like Rewrite Your About Page allows me to start faster and to stay more focused. So as I mentioned, I have at the end of the day or in the evening, as I'm kind of closing down, a shutdown ritual. And I'll briefly review my day. And that's when I'm deciding ahead of time what I'll be working on the next day. So we all have those projects that we need to do in our business that take a lot longer than 40 minutes. But we can never get everything done. And if we're trying to just generally work on it, it usually isn't terribly useful because we're jumping in and out and in and out. And so I just simply write down, and I break those down and decide ahead of time what part of that project or important thing am I going to be working on. And there's 3 of them in my day. I write them out by hand in that section of the daily sheet. And here's some other rules. So after I've decided ahead of time and I've written out my 3 things that I'm going to be working on, the next morning when I get up and I start work, so say the block is from 8 to 10 in the morning, there's a few rules that I follow that help me stay focused. One, it's the specificity, knowing that I'm just writing that about page and it's only going to last 40 minutes. That's really helpful to me because there's an end time, something I can look forward to and know that this ends. But I also turn off all the notifications on my computer, on my phone. I don't check my email until my success block is complete. I don't check social media until my success block is complete. I don't respond to texts until my success block is complete. And I don't answer phone calls until the success block is complete. And that's really hard for a lot of people. It was hard for me, just in terms of, especially email, right? Not checking email is a really difficult one, and that actually, by the way, starts as soon as I wake up. That rule is in place, not to check email as soon as I open my eyes, and I avoid doing that until I've done my success block, and that just sort of keeps all of my energy focused on this. There are cases where I needed to check email. For example, today is one of those. I needed to double check, and we're going to go over this in the action stack section. I wanted to double check that I didn't have any updates or messages from Allison specific to doing this webinar. So very quickly, I went in just to look for her email. And that is something else that when we go into our email, it's really important to think about, why am I here? So having a purpose, checking for one specific thing, and really working not to get pulled into anything else, because I wanted to be prepared for all of you. So this one system of deciding the night before, deciding ahead of time, and writing out my 3 blocks has helped me go from being a person who is constantly reacting and responding to the needs of everyone around me to helping me get my work done, and the work that I have determined is the most important for me and for growing my business. It's remarkable. I used to work in an office environment and was one of those managers for years, particularly when I was younger, believing in that open door policy. But what would happen is everybody was coming at me all the time and checking in. Can I share this? Do you have a second? Do you have 5 minutes? Can I talk to you for a second? That is other people's agendas. And what I would do is I felt like I was responding to all of their needs, when in fact I was constantly pushing off the work that I needed to do to run the organization and to move that organization forward. So I'd start cramming it at the end of the day. This kind of flips it. So that's really really important is for me to set that up first thing in the day. So let's move on. And as you're going along, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Allison's going to be gathering all of those. So if there's something specific to this, I'm happy to go back and address that. But please feel free to ask questions along the way as you think of them. Sort of capture that thought out of your head and put it into the chat, and we'll come back to it. And that ties in right now with how we manage distractions. And we're going to talk about that and interestingly enough, one of my favorite systems, simplest system I have, and something I get asked about a lot, which is the blank page. So managing distractions, notifications. I mentioned earlier, turning off all the notifications on, or not checking email, not checking social media. All of those things will grab our attention all the time. They're constantly interrupting it. So one of the first things I always remind people to do is just turn all of that off. We are not on call for surgery here. Unless you are, of course, but in general, our lives and our business are not so critical that message has to get through. But it's not just technology and that sort of notification that interrupts. My brain can interrupt me all the time. And there's an urgency, like it's just this little toddler going, "Oh, mom, mom, mom," and tugging at you, saying, it needs something, and it will interrupt me at these really inopportune times when I'm trying to focus, I'm trying to get some work done, and my brain just slides in there and lets me know that, oh, I forgot to make a vet appointment for my dog, or I needed to call and make a dentist appointment, or, oh, did you remember to fix that thing, or call there, or chat with your mom, whatever it is. My brain loves to interrupt me. And what used to happen in those cases is I would stop work and I would say something to the effect of, you know what, I'm just going to do that right now before I forget. And I stop that important work, switch over, and I pick up the phone, maybe to call my mom back or call her. And while I'm on the phone with her, I'm paying attention and scanning maybe to my laptop and checking my email while I'm talking to her. And I see that something else came in. So after I'm done with her, on the way back to maybe getting done what I was working on, I stop and check that, work on that email, and I see I can just respond really quickly. They just needed a quick answer. So let me do that right now before I forget. And while I'm doing that, I'll remember that I forgot to call to refill a prescription for medication. So I'll say, let me just do that right now before I forget. And one thing leads to another, and off I go down this rabbit trail of 1 or 2 minute activities that I just keep saying, let me do that right now before I forget. And then my day ends up getting filled with 2 minute activities before I forget. So as simple as this is, the most basic system I have is the blank page. And it's really a blank sheet of paper and a pen or pencil, whatever works for you. Those two tools, really, no technology needed, I have right beside me all the time. And what I use them for is when I'm working on something that requires my focus, instead of the let me do that right now before I forget, I just gently sort of shift my focus, and gently is important, capture it really quickly, and then get right back to the work. And that cycle of just being able to return, because when I keep following the other path, I've lost my place. I've lost my focus. I've forgotten what I was working on, or the creative energy that I was using and establishing to write is no longer there. So instead of switching my focus to this thing and the next thing and the next thing, just gently shift my energy over to the paper, capture the thought, and get back. It really, really is a powerful tool. It's as silly as it sounds. And then I build in times throughout the day where I can revisit that sheet. And, maybe it's during a lunch break where I'll just say, I'm going to quickly make those calls now. I have some time where I can do some of those things, but I know that it's safe because my brain is right. Like it will forget. It's horrible. It's not great at storing those little things, and I might forget for days. Eventually I'll remember. This way it's just captured, it's safe, and I get back to work and move on really quickly. So that's the blank page. And I actually learned that from a meditation technique that I was taught when I was a teenager. And this idea of, as we're trying to sort of calm the mind and focus on meditating, inevitably there will be these thoughts that kind of well up in our brains. We'll have those little interruptions that kind of take us off track. The tendency when we're meditating is to kind of fight that and push it down and try to get back in really quickly. But you have to let that thought go. You have to let it out and kind of resolve in some way, shape, or form. And then you gently return and come back, and you can get back and go even deeper that way. But if you're fighting the thought or you're reacting and responding to it, whereas you can just gently let it fly away or capture it, in this case, in the blank page. Super, super helpful. And just get back to the important work. And again, this all started with deciding ahead of time, right? I chose the night before, based on what I'm trying to accomplish in my business, to work on this very specific project. And it wasn't an in the moment decision. It wasn't rash. It's based on my plan of accomplishing whatever it is I've set for my goals that year. So this is really, it's really critical to honor that. And why would I want to disrupt that with anything, that random thought or someone else's email or text? A little thing about, just to go back to that interruption of turning off email, not responding to phone calls and texts. Just a little quick rule that I have established with my wife in particular is, if she calls once while I'm in that focus time, I generally don't pick up. However, if she calls twice, that's the signal. That's like the bat signal. It says basically, all right, it's time, or something's going on, and I need your help. I need you to pick up the phone. That's more important than what you're working on. And it's just a little rule that we have to kind of break through the other rules. So there are ways to get, to communicate and get those important things through. All right, so let's talk a little bit about simple business systems. And again, if you have any questions along the way, please drop it in the chat and we'll return to these, and we can easily do that. So simple business systems, I'm a sucker for having a system to work through something, particularly when it's something that I don't like to do. But the other thing my brain likes to do is, well, let me start over with this one. I'm the person in our company who's responsible for webinars, setting up all the webinars. I do, every, and there's probably 10, 15 steps that I have to go through to make sure everything's set up, creating it, making sure people are registered and everything's linked together and all the notifications are going to happen, so on and so forth. I've done it over and over and over again. I can do it in my sleep, but the way that my brain works tends to get a little creative. So I can start out pretty well and I'll say, oh, step 1, okay, great. Step 2, step 3, step 4, and I'm remembering, and then I go step 7, oh crap, step 6, step 9, and now I'm bouncing around. I'm trying to remember where I was. Did I complete that step? And again, I'll probably get it all done. I may not even miss any of the steps, and eventually it turns out okay. But I'm wasting a lot of mental energy trying to remember and switching back and forth, maybe even a twinge of, worry about, did I really do that? Do I now have to go back and double check? So I'm wasting a little time. And these are for very routine, it's something very routine. Like I don't need to think about this very much. So why would I? Why would I waste mental energy trying to remember something that doesn't require a lot of creative thought or energy right now? Because it's just a simple operational system, a simple business operation that just needs to be completed. So all of that bouncing around is, and again, it's fine, I'll get it all done, but it's taking away from me doing things that are actually really more important in terms of creating something, creating content, or growing my business in other ways. This is really just something that needs to get done. So my friend and business partner, Chris Brogan, and I created this systems called Action Stacks. And Action Stacks are simple, repeatable plans that are designed to help me stay focused on my business operations and help me not waste time and energy. And they're a system to help me move through each step of a recurring process really quickly and without a whole lot of decisions. You'll notice that I don't like to leave myself open to decisions. For every decision we make in the day, our ability to make subsequent decisions is degraded. So all these little tiny things that we put ourselves through in the morning, what to wear, what to eat, do I have this, do I have that, what am I doing today? All of that is chipping away at our mental energy and our decision-making energy. So I try to eliminate the need to make any of those tiny decisions or to remember those things so that I can focus my time and energy and attention on the things that matter to me. So you can create an action stack for virtually any aspect of your life or business, whether it's invoicing or to a customer service scenario. I have an action stack for writing a newsletter and a blog post, to posting and selling a webinar. You can use them for an exercise routine, weekly meal planning. They help you to eliminate those decisions and move through let's say the more routine parts of your day with greater effectiveness and ease and efficiency, and they free up your brain to do more important things. So here is the example I want to show you, is that webinar scheduling action stack. A little side note about technology: people always ask, oh, what tool do you use? Personally, I use something called Google Keep, but I know folks who use Evernote. I know people who use note cards and paper. Whatever works for you. I am generally technology agnostic when it comes to these things. The one thing I like about Google Keep is, as I'm going through the list and I check the box, I can check the box and it removes it out of the way, putting the next thing, leaving the next thing to do right there. But I can uncheck it all at the end and restore it to where it was, which is really a cool little feature. So here's my webinar scheduling. Build the webinar in Zoom using webinar template. So this is another decision I've made ahead of time. In Zoom and many platforms, you can create a standard template with all of the settings already checked off. Whose video is enabled, whose audio is enabled. The recording can happen automatically and go straight to the cloud. Can go to your desktop. All of those things when email reminders are going to be set. Create that template, and now you don't have to go through all those steps. So that's even the decide ahead of time before you end up doing this action stack, is take 5 minutes and create your standard template that you can just repeat and reuse. So I build the webinar inside of Zoom, add it to the calendar. Really important step. I put it second because I would always forget this step, and then I'd get an email from my business partner asking where the link was. So these things, they're flexible, and as you encounter little issues, you can add to them as you go along. So I don't need to walk you through every step, but you can see that I've got really specific here. Add to the calendar. Plus, this is the platform we use. I create a new product tag, and I'm really specific about the category it's in, and then the name of the webinar. Oh, that should be webinar, right? See, we can fix as we go along. And on and on and on. And as I'm checking these off, it's just moving me through a process that I don't really need to expend a whole lot of energy on. And everything gets done. And we're missing an M there. Look at that. We can just keep going with fixing these as we go along. This system, these action stacks, are super useful, and I use them all the time. In fact, I used one just before I got on this webinar, not at this level, but I have one that I use for anytime I'm about to appear on a webinar or appear on a show. There's certain things that I want to make sure are done. I want to make sure the lighting is set up, and the microphone and the laptop, and I, dressed appropriately, and all of those little steps are there so that I don't forget, because in the, you know, run up to getting on, we can kind of get a little amped up a little bit, and it's just helpful to kind of to have that there. It's really, really, really helpful for me. So a few steps, tips: don't skip steps when you're creating an action stack. And what I mean by that is really try to get as detailed as possible. And even if it seems a little silly to put in that step, just add it for now. It'll be helpful to guide you. And again, create those templates when you can. You know, Zoom allows for those webinar templates. Email marketing platforms, you can, you know, if you have a newsletter, you can have a standard template that you use over and over and over again. It's really helpful not to have to redo, you know, recreate the wheel, so to speak, every single time. And, you know, that particular action stack I use 2 or 3 times a month. I have action stacks that I use once a month, or action stacks that I use once a week, and I have some that I use every day. I categorize them in different ways, but I love to pull them up and just let it guide me through the process. I have a shutdown ritual every day, pull that action stack up, and it just helps to remind me to do the things that I know will set me up for success and put success in my way tomorrow. All right. Here's just that action stack I mentioned for getting prepared for a show or a webinar. You know, I check the calendar for any links. I paste the link into Firefox. That's just from a technology standpoint. I want to make sure, you know, I'm using turns out that browser just seems to work better. So lighting, microphone, laptop, all that stuff, the book right there. Letting my family know. Another thing, hey, I'm going to be on this webinar. Please be quiet, because, you know, I have a house full of kids who are schooling, and a wife who works from home. Just giving them a heads up that I'm going to be on for an hour or so is really helpful. The little things like that are super helpful. And one of the things that I love about these systems, all 3 of them really, is their flexibility. I told you at the beginning that this is something I want you to be able to personalize. So I've given you this framework and these tools, but how you use them is different. My success block actually got bumped to a different time today. That doesn't mean I'm going to skip it. I mean, where I am right now is solidly in the time that I usually set up for my success block. And that's fine. That was a choice I made, you know, ahead of time. I decided ahead of time. I still want to accomplish that success block. So I just simply move it, and I'm going to adhere to all those rules. I'm not going to check email. Now it's going to be until, you know, a couple hours later. And I'm not going to check social media, those sorts of things. So they apply, all the rules apply, the framework applies, the decisions I made last night about what I wanted to work on today were all in that success block last night. I still am going to do it, and I'm still going to use it that way. The blank page, you know, it's, you know, it's blank. It's completely flexible. It can be used for any idea that you have. It isn't just those little things. You might have a you know, quick idea for a newsletter. I write down subject lines for newsletters all the time. Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. So I just want to capture that safely. And that action stacks, this is all about your business systems. Your systems are different than mine. Your business operations are going to be different than mine. You're the expert of your business. But taking 5 minutes when you're going through something that you do routinely, and you know you can remember it. Again, it's not that you can't, but it minimizes the mistakes, and it minimizes the energy that you need to use. So take some time as you're going through that operation procedure next time, and just write down your steps, and then create an action stack for it the next time, and just pull it up and let it guide you instead of relying on, you know, on your memory and on your brain and wasting energy. I often find too that the action stacks help me with things that I don't want to do, the sort of grindy, repetitive, administrative stuff that always like flummoxes me, and I always, you know, kind of kick the can down the road a little bit. An action stack helps me to break it down, shrink the problem, and know that, you know, I just have to get through this. It's only going to take 15 minutes or 20 minutes or however much time each one has. That's also a useful thing too, is just to, when you've done it enough, you can just make a little note next to the title, how much time it takes to get that done. And it helps you to push through, helps me anyway, to push through some of those more grindy and less fun things. So that's it for me. Thanks so much. And we can start with your questions, and I'll also let you know that I'm going to have a PDF download of these notes, as I mentioned at the beginning, and that'll be at robhatch.com/PI webinar. And you can sign up for a weekly newsletter there and get a copy of the notes, and just a little note to go grab a copy of the book, Attention. And that you can get that at robhatch.com/attention. All right, what do we got for questions, Allison?
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to draw it to a close there, Rob. Thank you so much. And just remind people, I'll send out that link to the PDF for the notes for this session. I'd love to hear, actually, if you just pop in the notes in the chat now, which one thing you're going to take away and do from today's session. Maybe you're going to be doing all of it, but what's the one thing that's really going to make a big difference to you over the next, well, tomorrow or today, if you want to do that quick success block. Well, that was easy, Lucy. Okay. So yes, Attention is an absolutely superb book. So, Rob's got the link to that on the site. We'd also buy it in all good bookshops. We were just saying to Rob, phoned his local bookshop just to check that they had a copy in, and they said, no, sorry, it's been sold, which is even better. Yes, so they'll be getting more in. And we'll be back, of course, with a new PyQ webinar next month, details TBC, so watch this space. You can see the replay of, well, you'll see the replay of this through the link, but you'll also see the replay of all the public ones on practicalinspiration.com on the PyQ bit. I'm just having a quick look. We're getting action stacks from Matthew, notifications off from Paula, taking a step back at the end of the day, success block in 3 words. Jane's got them all really. Shut down time, says Tony. And yeah, brilliant, fantastic. So that really is it. Thank you so much. If you would like to know more about Attention, more about Rob, more about becoming a Practical Inspiration author yourself, then I'd love to hear from you. We're very, very proud to be publishing partners with a range of experts in lots of fields. So Rob, of course, is being one of them. So you can find out more at practicalinspiration.com. So thank you, Rob, on behalf of everybody. Massive thanks going on in the chat there. I'm sure you can see that. And I hope to see you all back here before too long for the next PyQ webinar. Goodbye for now.
Thanks so much.